DeFi is facing new scrutiny from regulators, but it seems they don't seem too intent on taking it out just yet. Joining us now to discuss is Nick Day, CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor and the editor of CoinDesk Absolute Must Read, Must Subscribe, State of Crypto newsletter. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, good morning.
Happy Friday. So, France and the US, they're putting out reports on DeFi. So exactly what's going on here? What are they getting at here?
Yeah, so this is something I wrote about this week for my newsletter, as you mentioned. And actually, interestingly enough, after that newsletter came out, Hong Kong also had a little bit of information on DeFi. But basically, it looks like we're seeing regulators starting to pay, if not closer attention to DeFi, at least acknowledge paying closer attention to DeFi. I'm sure they've been paying attention for a while now, but we're seeing reports coming out of the French Central Bank, the U.S. Treasury Department, basically assessing DeFi, trying to figure out, what kind of illicit activity or threats might this pose, and then suggesting, certain ways to mitigate that, whether it's trying to have DeFi entities and projects, DEXs and such, comply with Bank Secrecy Act requirements, or other issues like that, which is really interesting because, we've seen past reports from government entities advocating for, far stronger bans basically, but here we're not seeing that. It's more it's a lot more tempered, even though they do spend quite a bit of time saying, oh yeah, like this is definitely being used for crime and illicit activity and harming people. The recommendations aren't quite as severe as you might have expected.
Gensler didn't touch it, did he?
Treasury Department and French Central Bank, of course, is going to have its own thing.
If we're sort of describing a mood shift here, is there anything to indicate why that shift may have occurred?
I don't know if I'd call it a shift, really. My understanding is the U.S. Treasury Department in particular has generally been, more neutral about crypto stuff in general. I think one thing is just really really important to keep in mind for people watching this stuff. The federal government is not a monolith. It's not just that, President Biden says, okay, I believe this one thing about crypto, and then every agency falls in line. The, regulators are independent. The Treasury Department has its own thing. So I think what we're seeing here is kind of the result of that. And that's, the SEC is, pursuing its enforcement actions and trying to, make its authority over crypto spot markets more concrete. The CFTC is doing the same. All these regulators have their own specific issues to take a look at and that they have to deal with. Treasury Department here is making recommendations, but we haven't really seen the kind of rhetoric that we've seen out of, for example, that White House economic report or the SEC from Treasury. So I think this is just illustrative of that.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, is this a continuation of what we saw in the Trump administration, where you had different departments almost like championing different even tokens, even different cryptocurrencies? I mean, there was a little Ripple contingency and a little Bitcoin contingency. It seems like are we seeing that play out here as well in the Biden administration, where different departments are supporting different theses on what to do? And here in this case, in the Treasury Department being almost, one would say, and despite Janet Yellen running things, I don't want to say crypto friendly, but not as hostile as you would see with the SEC. If the report had come out from the SEC, we'd see something different.
I think that's fair, and it is worth noting, looking at the actual topics too. The Treasury report is taking a look at DeFi and possible use for illicit activity, which makes perfect sense. We've seen the Treasury Department, sanction Tornado Cash. We've seen reports and warnings about how DeFi entities in particular seem vulnerable to exploits, which then lead to things like, North Korea raising money, hundreds of millions of dollars from crypto exploits. So it makes perfect sense, I think, that a report from the Treasury Department would focus on things like that versus, if it was the SEC, it'd be securities focused. If it was the CFTC, it might be focused on, crypto spot markets and, potential fraud issues there. And you're right. We did see this, to an extent in the last administration as well. President Trump's Treasury Department was the one that proposed that FinCEN wallet rule that the entire industry banded together to, oppose. Whereas the CFTC was certainly much more positive, and the SEC seems, I would say, probably more neutral. I don't think the SEC has really had as dramatic a shift in its approach to crypto as some do between former chair Jay Clayton and current chair Gary Gensler. I think it's been very continuous, but definitely the rhetoric was markedly, I think, a bit more toned down.
Nick, I'm going to see you in Texas in a few weeks. Remember when you picked me up in a convertible at the airport last year? That was awesome.
I got you.
That was
I'll see
amazing.
if I can do that again.
All right. Well, that's Nick Day, great driver and also CoinDesk managing editor of Global Policy and Regulation. Happy Friday, Nick. And viewers, please don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com.